The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
you're now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is today, which is a day. It's Thursday, October 5th, 2017. I was thinking about not giving the date and time because the bulk of the people who listen to the show listen to it in the podcast format on the next day, on Friday morning. And I always give the previous date. So I wonder how you all have adjusted to that. I know when you download it, you're like, oh, this is old. But anyway, here we are. A lot of stuff to cover, a lot of interesting big news that happened today. But as always, I want to start the beginning of the show by thanking our patrons without whom this is not possible. You can get access to bonus content by going to patreon.com/the BPD show and becoming a patron for as little as $3 a month. Support the show while we support you in this progressive movement. Support independent media. Independent media means more now than ever. I don't even have to give you the story of why independent media is so important. I think the reason you're here now is because you already know that. So I'm not going to preach to the choir. I'm just going to move on. You can always weigh in on the discussion. 857-600-0518. I really have missed the live callers more than anything else because a lot of times callers will say something that I'm not even prepared to talk about, and they will stimulate just really great conversations just on the fly because of an observation. And then some of our callers have been so great that I just have to just shut up and let them talk the entire time. So I think one of the biggest benefits of this live show is that you get to call in and we get to talk about issues in real time. So I want to make sure that you do that. 857-600-0518 is the number to join in. Great. Let's jump in and get the show going. Afternoon and good evening to everyone in our chat rooms on Facebook, on YouTube. Bryce, I see you already there. Ryan, all the way there. We got a few people joining in. So let's get started. Today, Donald Trump has shown exactly how ridiculous. That's not the right adjective. Irresponsible doesn't feel strong enough. Dangerous. Donald Trump has shown exactly how dangerous he could possibly be. And it started off early this morning, and I thought the worst thing that he could do this morning, this is water in my cup, if you're wondering, the worst thing that I thought that he may do today would be to call for the Senate Intelligence Committee to investigate the news media that he thinks is fake via Twitter. I thought that was going to be the highlight or the low light of Donald Trump's day, but it wasn't. Right before our show went live this afternoon over in Content News, it came out from the Washington Post that Donald Trump is going to decertify the Iranian-nuclear deal. The Iranian-nuclear deal, which was signed by President Obama and negotiated by John Kerry, Secretary of State John Kerry, the Iranian nuclear deal that stalled for a good period of time, about 10 to 15 years, depending on whose estimate you asked, the Iranian nuclear program, the Iranian nuclear weapons program. The incentive for them to halt was the loosening of sanctions and the ability for Iran to be assimilated into the broader community and into the broader international community. And that second part, even though I say it kind of casually, is the most important part of the deal, if you ask me. Because as we've argued and debated about on my show plenty of times, I do not see any means of stopping a nation from obtaining nuclear weapons short of destroying them. I think in the long run, every nation has the ability, if they have the economic ability and the scientific capacity, they can get a nuclear weapon. And unless the United States is willing to go to war with every single one of them, or the international community collectively is ready to go to war with every single one of them, there's really not much that we can do to stop nuclear proliferation in the long run. Of course, everyone's like, well, what about the nuclear non-proliferation treaty? Well, the United States hasn't even signed on to that. We're not even a signatory to that. So in the long run, nation states are going to be able to get nuclear weapons. The important part of the nuclear deal with Iran is the fact that it created a framework for Iran to come into the international community economically. And why that's so important is that once you have gotten in bed economically and our economies become interdependent, a couple of things happens. One, now, what I'm getting ready to describe to you is neoliberalism. I just want to be upfront. This is global neoliberalism economically, and it is a foreign policy paradigm as well, international relations paradigm as well. But the neoliberal dream, which on the international stage is actually not, has some benefits. Let's leave it there. And here's the benefit. The neoliberal dream on the international stage is that states become so interconnected economically that it wards off any potential for conflict. That's like literally, that's like the core of the neoliberal of the neoliberal international relations theory. The international relations theory is based on the economic hope of interdependency, trade. Let's trade with each other. So that's one. It's theoretically, it seems pretty plausible because it has represented a period of a modicum of peace, relative stability, relative since the end of World War II. And again, I choose my words very intentionally. It's a modicum of peace and a modicum of stability compared to the years prior, right? In other words, we haven't had another world war. We've had plenty of proxy wars. We have plenty of skirmishes. We've killed plenty of people. We've drawn the hell out of regions. We've exploited the global south. We've done all these things that are still that are the pinnacle of American empire and capitalism and things that have to be addressed. However, what we have not had is a global world war. And that is based on the theory that when economies get interdependent, well, they have less incentive to go to war. It's based on the democratization theory that basically says that the United States or there has never really been wars between democracies. That's not really as accurate, but there's some truth. There's some evidence to support it. And then it's also called the McDonaldization theory. Basically, wherever there's a McDonald's, there's capitalism. And where there's capitalism, we're not going to go to war with another capitalistic state. All right. I'm going all the way around to tell you why the B side of the Iranian nuclear deal is so important and why it makes it so much more ridiculous for Donald Trump to decertify it. The B side of why the Iranian nuclear deal is so important is because it was set up to bring Iran from the cold, from being a rogue nation, from being on the outskirts, to bringing it back to really where it was before the Iranian revolution, and really where it was before the coup, the 1954 coup, where the United States installed the Shah. You know, Iran was a pretty modern state throughout most of its throughout most of the 19th century, of the early. I'm sorry, I remember my centuries right. The early 20th century. And so this allows a framework for them to come back into the collective international community, to get integrated into the different economies, to increase trade between all of the nations. And where there's trade, there's less likeliness for Iran to be a rogue state with nuclear weapons. What we were trying to create in the long run was to have a nuclear Iran, because they're going to eventually get a nuclear weapon anyway. A nuclear Iran that had more interest in stability than it did anything else. And I mean anything else, any religious differences with or any political interested differences with Israel, anything else. The most important thing for Iran in the long run would have been to maintain the stability, which means we can trust you, Iran, with a nuclear weapon. That's really what Obama's nuclear deal did. That's what it was. It was the pinnacle. If you ask me, it was the pinnacle of neoliberal international relations theory. And yet here, Donald Trump, just simply because he thinks it's the worst deal ever. I'm not going to call any names, and I'm not even going to call situations. I'm just going to say that there's a guy I got into an argument with today who swore up and down that the Iranian nuclear deal was the worst deal ever. And he couldn't prove to me why. I was like, why? Show me why. How, Sway? How is it the worst? I'm just saying it is. It is. Why? How? And then he said, well, Iran has already violated the deal anyway, so Trump is doing the right thing. I'm like, really? How? Please show me some evidence. And I'm going on this tangent because it shows you how ignorant and how propagandized is probably the more accurate word, how propagandized our population is. Particularly people of the conservative persuasion or the libertarian persuasion. They are so propagandized that even when we went to PolitiFact to check, has Iran violated the nuclear deal? The claim that Iran violated the nuclear deal, it was mostly false. Not that I think PolitiFact is like the crown jewel of integrity, because there's some stuff that I've seen on PolitiFact that's bullshit. I will admit that first. But when we went down, the only evidence that we had time to gather, the one that he brought to me was a PolitiFact. And it's like at the bottom, champ, at the bottom, it says that this claim that Iran violated the nuclear agreement is mostly false. But anyway, I can't believe that we are now in a situation where the only option for peace has now, or next week, he's supposed to give the speech on the 12th, and his plan is to reinstate sanctions and to deal harshly. You know, I can't believe we're at the point where the only real path for stability, let me choose my words correctly because it's not peace, it's going to be stability, is being poo-pooed upon by a man who probably hasn't even read 2 pages of the Iranian deal. And now we're talking about undermining America's position. This is another thing that I argue with conservatives quite a bit, conservatives who are my friends in particular. I argue that bravado is not strength. Sometimes bravado undermines your strength and puts you in a weaker position. In other words, when we were saying, oh, we're going into Iraq with shock and awe, everybody was like, America's strong. We went in with shock and awe and shocked and awed our ass right into a decades long, occupation and destabilizing the region, pouring in all of our resources, our money, our soldiers, the blood of Iraqis. We really, we went in and with bravado and screwed ourselves. And so bravado is not strength, but an oversimplistic view of the world will make you a foreign policy will make you think that the person who shouts the loudest is the strongest. And that type of overly simplistic view of the world has gotten us into trouble so many times. And here we are with this orange Cheeto, Donald Trump, I promise you, he is going to go down as the worst president in the history of the United States. And we've had some shitty presidents. And I think that's it, right? I don't want to draw that one out, but it's infuriating. It's infuriating because now what do we have? We have it's even worse. I forgot there is another part to this conversation. It undermines the United States in a fundamental fashion. There is a theory, and not a theory. There's a principle in international relations that probably is unspoken in most cases, because it is so fundamental to international agreements. And that is a Latin phrase called pacta sunt servanda. That means agreements must be kept. That means that if one king signs an agreement, the next king is going to keep it. If one president signs an agreement, the next president is going to keep it. And that has been such a fundamental tenet of international relations and diplomacy since the Thucydides, right? For forever. And now we have a president who says, not in a generation, not in 4 presidents later, not in, everybody who signed it during the time, they're dead now, so we can change our mind. But the very next president has undermined this principle to the point where now who's going to believe anything we say? Of course, you're going to say, oh, they shouldn't believe what we say anyway. That's fine. If that's your argument, I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing right now is that we have turned on the dime on an agreement that we worked out. So now nations they don't have any incentive whatsoever to enter into an agreement with the United States because they fundamentally will believe, because of Donald Trump, is this. They will fundamentally believe that America cannot be trusted. The next administration may undermine this administration. What treaty can we enter into? What treaty can we enter into and a nation not question whether or not the next administration is going to uphold it? And it undermines us in another principle fashion, because if we had a back channel, God damn Donald Trump, man, fuck that dude. Seriously. I mean, I can't say that enough, but motherfuck Donald Trump, because if we had a back channel to North Korea to stave off a conflict with North Korea that seemed inevitable because of 2 madmen at the helm of 2 nations with nuclear weapons, we had a back channel established with them through Rex Tillerson, and now they're going to look at Rex Tillerson and say, we can't do anything with you because we can't trust your president, and we can't trust the United States because they turn on their agreements. And his bravado has now undermined us in a spectacular fashion. I apologize, kind of, sort of. Sorry, not sorry for the profanity, but I just don't. I mean, I don't know if I'm more upset with Donald Trump being the piece of shit moron that he is, or the idiocy of people who actually believe that this is the right move. I don't know. But let's take the first caller. Undermined. Oh, okay. All right. I knew I was saying it wrong. Caller, you're live on the air. I just Googled. For anyone in the audience that cringed when I said it, I had to Google it myself. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hold on 1 second, man. Hey, it's me, Bryce.
Mm-hmm.
So let me get this straight. So, probably the best thing that Obama did foreign policy-wise, you're going to undermine because you want a quote-unquote better deal, and then you do that, and then now let's talk about the bigger picture, the real shit with it. And actually, Tom Hartman brought this up. One of the biggest reasons that they're doing this is because of the GOP wants to go to war with Iran for the religious right, theory of, Armageddon and bringing, second coming of Christ and all that. And, they're kind of, they want war. They want to do this for religious reasons, which is, obviously the right has taken, what we believe and just twisted it. But the point is, that's what the real crust is. The GOP got pissed because Obama was like, all right, I don't want to go to war with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got a peace deal out of that. So the GOP is pissed. So you got Michelle Bachmann and all these people that's, around Trump and everybody. And that's what they want to do. That's part of the reason. And I think that needs to be brought up. And it's just insane. It's like, we're not going to make it to the All-Star break of basketball next year because this dude wants
priorities,
to
man.
blow up
the
world. It's unbelievable. It's like, but that's the real thing.
Yeah.
The GOP, the religious right, want to go to war with Iran. So they're like, all right, well, Obama didn't do it, and we're mad at him. So we're going to undermine so we can just do it since he left. And it's like, what? Like, what do you, I'm sorry. I'm trying like
Bryce, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Bryce got so hot he had to hang up the phone. Bryce, I appreciate the call, man. I appreciate your energy and your passion there. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. I'm not laughing at you, man. I'm laughing with you because it is frustrating like that. It is obscenely frustrating because because of everything I've already explained, right? Because of everything I've already explained, it's definitely. Let's take the next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's Ryan. How you doing?
Doing good, Ryan. I see you lighting up the chat room. What's on your mind?
Yeah, sorry about that. But Bryce is right about the religious right wanting to go to war with Iran. Being in the military from active duty 2002 and then off and on up until January 1, 2014, I had the distinct pleasure to converse with an author who actually studied and wrote about our foray into Iraq.
Okay.
He covered my West Point class specifically, and he sent me a questionnaire of, my service, went through everything. And then one of the questions in his questionnaire was, it specifically mentioned mentioned what Bryce was talking about, how there are people in the religious right who really think it is their duty and God's calling for us and them to go to war with other countries. And I asked him about this. I said, why did you ask me this question? And this author goes, because I actually had one of your classmates say that's why he was in the military and that's why he wanted to be in Iraq in this conflict. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Wow. That's scary. And one of the, I don't know how it was mind boggling. Wow. So Bryce is 100% correct. And it's amazing that we're talking about this right now. And it's amazing that the orange moron just did something like that to further, number one, the GOP's obsession with erasing everything that President Obama has done and did. Right. And then we're going to erase it and then we're going to do something better. No, you're not. I mean, you can't even make a real estate deal without laundering money. So, I mean, what's he going to do? I mean, the guy doesn't know his butt from a hole in the ground. Yep, I agree with that. Thanks for the call, Ryan. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, my pleasure, man. I agree. Listen, I just laughed at how Bryce hung up the call, and that was hilarious because he was so frustrated. But you're right. There's a strain. There's two ways you could look at it, right? You have a secular version of this and you have a religious version of this. There's a religious strain in Christianity that is an apocalyptic group that looks to bring about Armageddon. Armageddon is the great cataclysmic war at the end of times. And they're looking to bring it about, like actively do things to bring about Armageddon. That's the religious version of very popular and very present in the dominionism. This is their worldview, and they see this as not only inevitable, right? It's one thing if you believe, there's a great war coming to end all wars and the coming back of Christ. If you believe that, it's one thing to believe it. It's another entirely to try to put yourself into position to bring that about. And we have people amongst us who are that. They believe that and they want to implement that. The secular version of that is not attached to any metaphysical elements. It's completely attached to this idea that of a clash of civilizations based on Judeo-Christian values versus anyone else. Right. They don't necessarily attach it to a belief that Jesus even exists or that he's coming back, but they fundamentally attach it to a world order that they believe should reign across the globe. And that is a Judeo-Christian, white Anglo-Saxon type order. And they are just as dangerous because they are probably more present in our levels of power throughout. And this is not, as I describe this, I don't want to describe this as some type of Illuminati. This is like your cousin John Bob, who goes to church a whole lot
and starts to believe in it so much that he wants to join the military in order to fight off the infidel. You know, in I hope you notice the play on words, right? That's the same language that you get from radical Islamists, to use Donald Trump's favorite phrase. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and/or question?
Hey, Ben, this is Brianna.
Hey, Brianna. Good to hear from you. Long time.
I know, long time. It's great to hear you again. Yeah, I agree with Bryce and the other caller about, you know, they just basically, in my point of view, mainly with Trump, that Trump just wants to do this to undermine Obama's legacy and everything else, because, no, he does not like Obama at all.
No.
And I really don't think he gives two rat's ass about, you know, the whole religious thing, you know, want to go to war religion. I think it's just him undermining Obama. And only thing I'd say, we got to get him out of office by 2019, 2020. We got to get him out.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll even vote for Kamala Harris if it turns. I'll vote for her. I will. I'm always skeptical of politicians, but
listen.
Like, if she keeps doing what she's doing, I'll vote for her.
Let me tell you. Let me help you out. Let me help you out. Here's the deal, folks. And a lot of people, I will argue with anybody, any of my socialist friends, any of my more radical friends than me. I will argue with you to the death about this. Democrats, particularly Barack Obama and even Kamala Harris, whoever else, they will not change the system for the better, except maybe on the margins. Maybe they take the tax rate to 36% for the top 1% instead of 33%, right? They're not really going to change the status quo. They represent the status quo. But you know what's worse than the status quo? Going to damn war with Iran and North Korea over the impetuousness of the Republican Party. That's something that I feel that we fundamentally just have to call it what it is. You may not like the Democrats economically in the long run. They may not change anything. Obama will drone the hell out of the Middle East because he's going to maintain the status quo. But you know what he's not going to do? What he wasn't going to do is get us into a war with Iran. And that's why we got the Iranian-nuclear deal. So you don't even have to explain, you don't have to go through a lot of hurdles, Brianna, to explain why you would vote for Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. I'll explain it for you, because Kamala Harris, 9.9 times out of 10, she is not going to get us into a generations long war like Iraq, like Afghanistan, and now Iran potentially, and North Korea. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, and one more thing, it's just going to be like 4 years, maybe even 8 if he wins again. But just the damage he's going to last for decades. Just our damage on the international stage, the damage to the economy, if his budget gets passed and the taxes. We're going to have to spend decades
undoing that,
fixing what he does.
Yeah.
And we thought George W. Bush was that. He's still bad.
Right.
But,
George W. Bush still holds the crown of being the worst. Thanks for the call, Brianna. He still holds the crown of being the worst president because he did get us. George W. Bush gets no respite from me. He gets nothing, no quarter for the Bushes, because George W. Bush got us into a generations long war. We're literally going to send kids into war who were not old enough, who were not born on 9/11. Right. And so Donald Trump, I don't know what he's doing in his mind, but he's trying to compete with George Bush to be the worst on international policy. And that is something that is terrifying, because he's ripping up the one deal that kept us. We actually had a diplomatic solution. Nobody really liked the deal because it was never a guarantee that Iran was never going to get a nuclear deal. But when you took a step back and realized what it did accomplish, it bought us enough time to bring Iran out of the code and into the international community as a member of the international community. I mean, imagine here's essentially what the Iranian nuclear deal could have done. Consider North Korea, this isolated rogue nation that has barely any trade deals with anyone except for China, maybe a few with Russia. And they are plowing down the path of getting a nuclear weapon, particularly, to defend against the American aggression, even if you want to put it that way, fine. The nuclear deal with North Korea that is parallel or analogous to that which we had with Iran would mean that North Korea would stop their nuclear program for about 10 years. And those 10 years, what we do is we lift the sanctions off of North Korea and we allow North Korea to flourish. And we allow the elites, the economic elites in North Korea to get connected with the economic elites in the United States, and they do business together. And then the economic elites in North Korea get connected to the economic elites in the UK, and all their money starts to have babies and interconnectivity. And so now they have business deals that they've done together that are so intricate that the elites in North Korea will look at the government of North Korea and say, you must be out of your damn mind thinking about going to war with the United States. We have too many economic deals in the United States. And in 10 years, North Korea would go back, finish their nuclear program, because we could never stop them anyway unless we were willing to blow them up. Having to blow them up, we get a new player in the international community economically, and we get a new player in the international community as a nuclear power that has a vested interest in sustaining stability. But what do we have now? We have the Iranian nation who is, for all intents and purposes, if he decertifies this, they have the ability to say, okay, F it. Let's go ahead and get us a bomb because we need to protect ourselves because Trump wants to attack us. And North Korea, who's on looking and saying, oh, we can't trust them motherfuckers anyway. So why would we ever get into a deal? Why would we ever get into a diplomatic solution with the United States? Let's continue getting a bomb that can reach the United States. And that's pretty much, that's the whole story. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hello?
Yep, this is you. You're live. What's up?
All right. First of all, my name is Keith from Illinois. Just want to say thank you for the show. I always try to tune in and get your analysis.
My pleasure.
I understand today you're kind of talking more geopolitical stuff, but I just kind of wanted to touch on something that's been on my head constantly ever since Trump got into office. And the thing that is most upsetting to me is I always see all these complaints about everything that's going wrong in this country. I see everybody talking about how can these elected officials do this? Why are laws in my state so lackadaisical, etc. And I'm asking you, where is the same type of organization and dedication to taking over government that we saw with things like the Tea Party, for example, when Obama was in office? Why is it that they can become single issue voters on things like abortion, gun control, but then here on the left side, we have all these petty arguments and we're not single issue voters. And sometimes that can be good, I understand, but where is the unity that we always talk about that we have on the left? Because I don't see it. And that's just kind of, I don't know, sorry for ranting, but that's just my thoughts.
Hey, thanks for the call, man. I'll be glad to answer that. And then I'll segue into an issue that we need to be unified against on the left. So in a way, we do have that, but not big enough to actually influence. And let me give you this off the air so I can clear the lines. We do have something that is comparable to the Tea Party, except it's not. And what I'm trying to say, so what the Tea Party did was push the Republican Party to the extreme right, to the right, but they actually had electoral power. They organized for electoral power. And I guess I don't want to make the false equivalence because I'm not saying that you're wrong. In actuality, you're very right in what you said, but we do have a movement that is pushing the Democratic Party to the left. And we're able to get topics like single payer into the national discourse. We're able to convince and put pressure on politicians to come over to the side of single payer, of Medicare for all, rather. And so we do have an ideological movement that is able to influence politicians,
But what we don't have is an electoral movement that can actually put people into office. I haven't seen it yet. And that's what's sorely missing. And I think that electoral power is more a result of, God, I don't want to insult us and I don't want to be an ageist. Two things. One, the Tea Party was an older movement that had a lot of funding from billionaires, right? It was AstroTurf. There was a lot of funding there, but there was also an older movement of people who would go to those local meetings and just sit there and spout out the stuff that they heard from Rush Limbaugh, right? That was a key part. They had funding to organize, which was great for them, but they also had people who would go and be a part of that local meeting and then get 2 other people and 3 other people to be a part of that meeting. And then all of a sudden there's 3 of us at the we're Tea Party Republicans, and there's a whole 3 of us, and we're going to take over this local chapter of the Republican Party. And you know what? They went to every goddamn meeting and they got that shit done. That's what we're missing. And I stress this. I've been stressing this since the election, the primaries. We need people who, if you really want to see the power that the Tea Party had on the right, if you want to see that represented on the left, it has to come from people, a large group of people, enough to have electoral power to go to these Democratic meetings and take over. And take over for left-leaning policies. We don't really have a lot of that, man. We don't really have a lot of that because we are. I don't want to say we're divided, because it's not as though we're fighting each other a whole lot. Okay, pause. We're here real quick. There was a moment there over the summer. I wasn't really doing my show, but I was engaged in an all-out scorched earth feud with a faction of the left that I don't even consider the left anymore. We call them not Sam Cedar, but Michael Brooks of the Majority Report calls them the dumb left. I call them the conspiracy theory left. That was a parting of the ways. That was, we can no longer work together because we see things fundamentally different, and we have totally different worldviews and totally different views with regard to racism, white supremacy, and even economics, right? And so there was a feud there that was a parting of the ways, and to me, that feud did not represent infighting. That feud represented amputation of a dead limb. We had to get them the hell away. Now, outside of that, the division that is greatest on the left is between neoliberals and progressives. And that is both necessary as well as unproductive. It's necessary ideologically because we have fundamentally different views on policy. And it's worth arguing over. But it's detrimental to the point where, we're locked there. We stay there. We're more busy arguing, trying to win arguments on Twitter about whether or not Hillary Clinton called someone a super predator, or did she really mean, was she racist? Was she said what? And energy is utilized there instead of saying, cut this goddamn phone off and let's get to work and go to these meetings and go to a local meeting. And I don't care what happens on the national level, because I can affect what happens right here in my local chapter that has 25 members, and they're dying for the opportunity to get an influx of new blood and new life in that local Democratic chapter. That's what the Tea Party did that the left and the Democratic Party is not doing. Somebody said in the chat room, I actually want to address this. The Tea Party didn't have to fight with their own party for the most part. The left only has to fight with the right, but their own corporate Democrats. So that's not true, James. Let me tell you why that's not true. I remember when I remember in several elections after 2010 that the Republican corporate party had to send in major money and major players. I mean, people who were like basically political hitmen, not in the literal sense, but in the rhetorical sense, send them in to try to suppress the Tea Party movement in Florida in particular. And guess what? The Tea Party players won.
How do you think you got Alan West out of a congressional district in Florida? He's a Tea Party candidate. How do you think you got Marco Rubio? Do you guys realize Marco Rubio is nice and groomed and polished now, and he's a corporate Republican, but he won as a Tea Partier? How do you think you got Ted Cruz? I mean, they fought, the Republican Party poured millions of dollars into fighting back against the Tea Party, while another faction in the Republican Party said, okay, let's utilize it. But there was still a great divide in the Republican Party back in 2010. So, I mean, I don't want there to be revisionist history here. The Republican Party did not want the Tea Party. They wanted the Tea Party energy without the Tea Party candidates. You know what they got? They got the Tea Party energy, and then they got the Tea Party candidates because they could not stop the candidates no matter how much money they poured into it. All right. Let's move on. Which brings me to the next subject: tax cuts, budgets. And the last caller is taking me there because if there's anything that we should be able to agree on on the left between neoliberals and progressives, is the fact that the Trump tax cuts, the Trump-Ryan tax cuts, need to be stopped at all costs. Megatron must be stopped no matter the cost. That was actually pretty good. Actually pretty good Optimus Prime I just did there. Anyway, we need to stop these tax cuts because it is this tax reform, quote unquote reform. It is fundamentally going to reshape our economy, send us into another recession. And it's going to be perfect. It's like we go through these cycles where we have a Democratic president who's actually a fiscal conservative. He's not going to bring about anything remotely democratic socialist. He's going to just be a good manager of the economy. And he's going to fix the economy within the parameters of republicanism. That's what Bill Clinton did. And just as soon as you get a Democratic president who is a good Republican on the economy, a fiscal conservative, not going to do anything to really shake it up. They're going to do welfare reform. They're going to do all that kind of crap, right? They're going to screw a lot of poor people, but they're going to fix the economy within the framework, the acceptable parameters of the Republican Party. The stock market's going to go up. Unemployment's going to go down, at least the U3, not the true unemployment rate. That's going to go down. You're going to see economic growth. You're going to see new sectors flourishing. You're going to see that underneath a fiscal conservative Democrat. And then as soon as we get done with that, we get a Republican who comes in and just poops on all of that. I mean, and I don't have much vocabulary tonight because I'm tired. So that's all I can say. You got George W. Bush who comes in, and the first thing he does is he starts a tax plan that is going to be similar to what Donald Trump is going to try to do, but Donald Trump takes it up a whole notch. And then he maintains these tax cuts while he engages in a war. What exactly is Donald Trump getting ready to do after 8 years of Donald Trump, of Barack Obama, rather, being an efficient manager of the American economy based on the standard, the generally accepted accounting principles, right? Actually, that's a very specific thing. But what I meant was the generally accepted measurements of a successful economic president. Barack Obama was efficient in that way. And now we get back to a level of growth and a level of recovery, and we get things cranking based on the generally accepted economic parameters, right? And now you get Donald Trump come in and undermine all of that. And he comes in, and not only is he trying to get us into tax breaks that are going to create or add, I believe, $5 trillion to the deficit, but he's also going to try to get us into a war simultaneously. This is madness. This is madness that is almost a perfect. There's only one exception to this curve, to this graph that I just graphed up of the ups and down between the Democrat who's an efficient economic conservative and a manager of the economy, and a Republican who reigns like a madman. There's only one exception: George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush, who actually had the unfortunate privilege of coming behind 8 years of a Republican doing the exact same goddamn thing. Ronald Reagan, tax breaks for everybody. You get a tax break. You get it. But
Poor people, you don't get a tax break. But rich people, you get a tax break. You know, richer people, you get a tax break. And we're going to explode our spending on on defense. No, we didn't have a hot war. I know we had a couple of proxy wars in there, obviously. I'm trying to think of any hot war that I can't think of one right now. But he exploded the defense budget. And what did he leave? He left a mess for which HW had to recover from. And so HW broke his campaign promise of read my lips, no new taxes, right? He broke his campaign promise, had to raise taxes to fix the hole that Ronald Reagan left them. And what happened to him? Republicans turned on his ass and he got the boot. Ross Perot came in and he got the boot. So I just gave you kind of a general overview of all the presidents in my lifetime and the entire swing. We go down, we go up, we go to Grenada. Thank you. I knew there was one. Thanks for the chat room. And here we go again. Here we go again with a president who's promising the same thing that Ronald Reagan promised and couldn't deliver on, which is if we cut taxes, we're going to increase tax revenues, and we're going to increase tax revenues because it's going to stimulate growth. Supply side economics has been voodoo economics since George H.W. called it voodoo economics in the 1980 presidential campaign. Unfortunately, he lost. He lost to Ronald Reagan. Chances are he would have done the same damn thing anyway, so I am not going to say unfortunately. But here we are. What is it? 1980 with 30. I guess it's the same age I am. I was born in 80. So 37 years of experimenting with supply side economics. Not to mention all the international data points that we could pull, but 37 years in the United States alone of seeing that it tanks the economy. It leads us into a recession. It explodes the deficits, which inevitably adds to the debt. It does not cause the economy to grow any faster. And we haven't learned the lesson in 37 years. That's because they don't care to learn the lesson. They know it doesn't work. What they want is immediate satisfaction. What they want, they're just like CEOs of corporations who aren't really concerned about the growth of the company in the long run. They're just concerned about meeting their profit goals for the quarter. And so they do insane things for that quarter to make sure that they hit their revenue goals so they can hit their profit goals, undermining the company in the long run. Same exact type of managerial CEO thinking where they don't really care about the long term of the United States. They're really focused on how they can satisfy their shareholders, the top 1%, how they can satisfy them right away. They know these tax cuts that Paul Ryan and the House Republicans passed today. Give me 1 second, guys. I'm reading the comment in the comment section. No, okay. No, you guys must be talking about something else. All right. They know the tax cuts that they cut today, that they passed today, or rather the budget that they passed today, which is setting up the tax cuts. This is a 1-2 step. This is a dance for them, right? So today was a passage of the budget because they have to pass the budget before they can do the tax reform. They need to pass the budget because they need to do reconciliation rules. Without reconciliation rules, they really don't have a framework for them to operate in. They're going to create the framework in the Senate for reconciliation rules, which is going to, these rules this time will make it so that the Republican Party will only need 51, a simple majority, to pass tax breaks instead of the 60. And so the Senate can't make a move on that until the House makes a move on that. The House has made the move. They passed the bill today, and now the Senate is going to do their version. They're going to have reconciliation? I can't think of the actual name right now, where they're going to merge the two bills, and then the president's going to sign it. The next thing that you're going to see is going to be tax breaks, and they're going to promise their people. I mean, here's the thing. I keep asking, how can people keep falling for it? But I've already given the answer. The people that matter to them know that this is not going to work for the American people or the American economy, but it's going to work fabulously for their bottom line. So I need to correct myself and stop lamenting over people who can't see clearly that this is going to hurt them. Because I'm wondering what percentage of Republicans are, we always make fun of poor Republicans in like Mississippi and red states and stuff like that. But
I wonder if it's enough of them, which I'm thinking out loud here, guys. So let me think this through with me. And I think I've already answered the question before I get to the question itself. But I wonder if there's a large enough percentage of poor ass Republicans who can turn the tide in the Republican Party if they were wise and understood what was being done to them. In general, I would have to say yes, because most of America's poor as shit. All right, the median income is like what, for 50,000 for a family of four. I'm rusty, but the median income is pretty low, and in red states it's even lower. So the answer, just based on that alone, should be yes. But the people who wield the power in the Republican Party, the people who control the reins of power in their local, those people, obviously, they have to know that this doesn't work. And I think that they have to not care that it doesn't work for the economy and for the average American, because it works for them. I just can't see for the life of me someone with enough political influence in the Republican Party, knowing full and damn well that this is going to hurt them economically, voting against their best interest. I still am holding out for this economic idea of a rational actor, an international relations theory idea of a rational actor, that people are going to make rational decisions. Informed people are going to make rational decisions. And I'm going through this with you live on the air because I'm really struggling to think that maybe there are people who know that this is going to hurt them and they're still going to vote for the Republican Party. I know. Maybe I should just keep it simple and say some of them are just dumb as shit. I know, but it still just bothers me to think that people can have all this information and still vote for a party that's going to take food out of their mouths. But stranger things have happened and happen every day. Conversation going on in the chat room that I had to take a pause to take a look at. They're listing the proxy wars during the Reagan administration. Totally. I think we had, and this is going back to my comment about I couldn't figure out if we had any hot wars during Ronald Reagan, but I think the Cold War was sufficient, right? We had proxy wars we had several proxy wars. We've had many proxy wars with the then USSR, but during Reagan's time, it was the Afghanistan proxy war. All right, 857-600-0518. It's all about the belief in the American dream, Ben. That's why they vote Republican. Do you think? I'm going to go on a totally. What's my last topic? Hang on, let me check my topics because I might go somewhere totally different now because you've stimulated a thought that I think is worthwhile. Trump to decertify St. Louis. Oh, I gotta talk about St. Louis. What I'm gonna do is I did a great interview today with Chuck Modi. He's a journalist and he's an educator and an advocate. I did a great interview with him. I'm gonna get that interview and share it on my channel because there was more meat and information in that interview alone than anything I could do in the next 5 minutes. I only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to share that on my channel, and I want to make sure that you all get a chance to see it. On what's happening, the crackdown that's happening in St. Louis and the hyper-militarization of the police. What we saw in Ferguson, we're seeing again, and it's been going on for 3 weeks. So I want to share that and make sure that you get all that information and at least hear the interview from one of the journalists that were on the ground out there. So I want to end with this. This is a comment from Ryan in the chat room. He said, hang on, let me just get back here. He said it's the American dream, and that people, hang on, I want to get that specific. It's all about the American dream, Ben. That's why they vote Republican. And the reason I want to end here is because I have to ask the question, what do you think? Do you think the American dream is still potent enough for people to believe in it above and beyond? I mean, don't get me wrong, because I'm out here hustling my ass off, working a whole bunch of hours because of my own version of the American dream, I guess. I don't know if maybe I'm just as deluded as the next person, as the Republicans that I'm talking about. That could be the case. And I have full information, right? You know, I mean, I have as much knowledge as one would need to realize that this shit really just doesn't work for I would say the 99% of Americans. The American dream just does not work. So maybe I'm just as delusional as that. Well, anyway, let me continue in my delusion so I can finish the show. So my question for you is, do you think that the American dream is still potent enough to have people believe in it despite the evidence, to the extent that they're willing to support a party that all they can do is feed you the American dream, but they're going to implement policies to keep you from obtaining it? In other words, is the American dream potent enough still to keep poor Republicans voting for the Republican Party? I don't know that. I think we've woken up from the American dream some. I mean, we might not be the right word. I think the left, we know full and damn well that the American dream is a pipe dream. So that's a question I really don't have the answer to right now. But what it did stimulate was one other thought that I wanted to bring in that is completely off in the left field. But when you talk about the American dream and people just wanting to vote into and support that, it reminds me of the saying that religion is the opiate for the masses. And I've been thinking about that thing for a while now. I usually I just say it kind of as coy and cliche, and, I kind of say it because I'm a very religious person and I see the effects that it has. But a lot of times we say that as a negative thing. And I would apply the same logic to, or at least the same concept to the American dream. The American dream is really the opiate for the American masses. It's that thing, economic opiate, right? It's that thing that keeps you not so much just sedated, but it eases the pain of our economic realities in the United States. And if you think about it, if we didn't have the economic opiate for the masses of the American dream, we would have burned this shit down a long time ago. We would have, if it was not for the hope that if we work hard enough, we'd get something in this country, we would have burned America to the ground long before you and I were born. And so absolutely, the American dream is the true opiate. This is the economic opiate for the masses. But then the reason I even think about that phrase, the opiate for the masses, is because if you think about not only the sedative, the sedating element of opiate, but the ability to ease the pain. Sometimes reality sucks so much that you might need something to ease the pain. I'm not saying that for the economic. I'm not saying that for the American dream, because screw the American dream. Everybody needs to wake the hell up. Everybody needs to wake the hell up on the American dream and realize that only a few are going to make it out, man. Only a few are going to be able. I think we can even if you want to know what the American dream is, it is the statistic that shows that 1% of the people who are born into poverty make it to the wealthiest category in the United States. 1%. That's the American dream. 1% of you who are born in poverty are going to be able to go from poverty into being a wealthy American. That's the American dream. So the rest of us, we're going to keep doping up on the opiate for the masses of religion that helps us ease the pain of that reality, as well as a whole lot of other realities that I'm alluding to, but I'm intentionally not going into, because if I go into it, we will be here for another 30, 45 minutes. And I've got to go to bed because I've got work in the morning. Hey, folks, have a great weekend. Patrons, I'm going to do us a show tomorrow. I don't know what time I'm going to do it, if I'm going to do it in the morning or the afternoon, but I will let you know when it's out. If you want to get access to that full hour Friday show, go to patreon.com. We need your support, straight up and down. Up, down, side to side. We need your support. Go to patreon.com and become a patron today and get access to tomorrow's bonus show. I will see you next time.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like,
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.